All right, welcome to another edition of The Persistent Rumor. My name is Chocolate Yoda, spelled Yoddah, because film studios are litigious. And with me, as always, that big hunk of a man to my right. He is my heterosexual life mate, Chancleta.
Present. Hello.
So what's on your mind, man? Anything interesting going on?
Never. I gotta tell you, that's never anything interesting. I play off for you, bro. That's how I'm rolling. So, I've managed to stay off of the social media. It's like social media in general a lot this week. Well, more so than usual. It's not like I'm never on it, but I'm not looking for news or anything. Like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm engaging with people. Yeah, like I'm trying to engage with people. I'm trying to get away from all that craziness because you want to know what? There seems to be nothing that you can really like any topic that you can cover that there's not some sort of I guess some sort of different point of view or perspective that can be, sullied. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, like you can look at anything from a political perspective or anything to do with just, the way somebody lives or anything. You can offer somebody advice. Like, I saw a post about something where it was like, somebody's like, we're supposed to be handing down, things to our children, pass things on like a home or something. You're not supposed to be kicking them out at 18 or whatever. So this was just somebody's post that, somebody posted.
What does one have to do with the other?
Somebody just posted that. I don't know. I'm just telling you that this is what people post. And you start reading through the comments and it's like, and then you have these people that agree. And I just kind of mentioned, it's like, hey, listen, if one thing that you can do is like, if you're torn between, like whether you want to have your child, struggle a little bit, but not a lot, you can try to, when they turn 18, maybe charge them rent so they can keep that responsibility. But instead of keeping their money, like take that money and invest it in safe investments. And when they move out on their own, you could be like, hey, listen, here's a nice head start for you. You know what I mean? And it's something they built. You're going to teach them a lesson on like, whatever. And there's always somebody who's just like, oh, well, I don't think that's good because I struggled like crazy. And I think my kids should too. And it's like, that's good. I'm answering the question of a lady who's torn between that. And I'm giving her an idea of what to do. But there's always somebody that's just like willing to just attack a circumstance unnecessarily. And it's just like, and so that's kind of why I'm just kind of trying to stay off of social media for the most part, because I just feel like there's always an opposition that you just got to deal with. And it's just kind of ridiculous at this point. You know what I mean? But that's it for me.
Interesting. Yeah,
Have you
what was your question?
Have you encountered that? Like, is that your experience with people or just reading news in general or whatever?
Yes and no. So I don't think of it in terms of something that I have to experience or something to dread, because for me, like, let's say I'm on a thread on Facebook, and then the thread starts in a direction that's unpleasant to me. I just opt for not getting more notifications on that thread, and I'm done. The beauty
absolutely.
of it is that I can walk away at any time, and I don't, my experience online, and I'll talk about Facebook because Facebook is what I'm on most of the time, and I'm on it every day. And the reason I'm on it every day is because it's a pleasant experience for me. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have unpleasant moments on it. Of course I do. And watching people get into a tizzy over nothing is usually kind of annoying, but sometimes it's kind of funny too, because I love overreaction. I think it's hilarious. I love unnecessary aggression. Like
Yeah.
people that you'll say something and they can't just politely disagree with you. They have to go all in and attack you. And of course, I find those people funny and pathetic. It's like, you're only doing that because you're online. Because if you were standing in front of me, you wouldn't talk to me that way. And by the way, I'm not saying that because I think I'm a tough guy or anything. I'm saying that because it just never happens in real life. Like, people are not just like, fuck you,
Sure.
like, nobody talks to me like that. I don't really look like one of those people that you should talk to that way, because I look like 90% of the composite sketches out there. So, people don't have a tendency. And, that kind of thing very often is about perceived weakness. Like, people pick on people that they think they can pick on, right? And online is the safest way to do it. All you're seeing is a photo of another person. You're not engaging with that person directly. So from the safety of your dwelling, you can attack people in a way that you would almost never do in real life. Like I said, I don't have people talking to me that way in real life. Even when I worked in offices, even when I worked around, like my last job, I was around people all the time. People, all over Staten Island, all over Brooklyn. Nobody talked to me like that. Even people that were very comfortable with me, they never talked to me like that. Even if they disagreed with something, they would just make their case for why they disagreed or whatever, but nobody was ever like, fuck you, you're stupid, what's wrong with you? And, and we know why people do that online. They do it because they can. They do it because they don't have the balls to confront people like that in real life, but they always want to, so they take that opportunity. They're basically scavengers in a way. They're emotional scavengers, because, like I said, it's not something that they would ever initiate in real life, but when that opportunity presents itself online, these, cowardly little fucks, jump in and do what they do. And of course they can, because there's no one to punch them in the face, But if you're standing in front of me, and, you start talking to me and you see my face start to change with what you're saying, you understand that a few more words in and you might get punched in the face. And I don't run around punching people in the face. I don't get into fights and shit like that. But I have a pretty severe resting bitch face. And, people, and I don't have any kind of poker face either. So when you're saying shit that I don't like, you're going to know that I don't like it, and then you're going to decide, hey, how far do I go with this?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, like, growing up in New York City, like, I used to commute, and if you're not familiar with New York City, most of the people live outside of Manhattan. At least the non-rich live outside of Manhattan, and so they live in one of the boroughs outside of Manhattan, and they commute into the city. I get in a subway, and because I don't want to be bothered, most of the time what would happen is I would walk into the subway, I would throw on my headphones, earbuds, whatever the fuck I had, and I would just, like, put on my resting bitch face. And very often, at least in the beginning when I was much younger, it was something I worked on. Like, it was something that I just, made sure that I was like,
so you did that consciously?
It was a conscious thing in the beginning, because I just, in the beginning I was like, like, I don't know, I don't want to do that.
That's
and I would say, like, maybe when I was 17 or something. Yeah.
I never knew I had a resting bitch face. Someone had to point it out to me. And, I mean, now that I'm recording podcasts, I definitely see it.
Well, what's really interesting is that once I decided that I didn't want to have a resting bitch face, then I couldn't really shut it off. That's just the way it was. You know what I mean? It's almost like muscle memory, which was really ridiculous. So
your mother was right. If you make that face long enough, you're going to freeze in that face.
Apparently, yeah. So, but that's the funny thing. It's like, we can develop habits of anything, man. Like, it's just what it is. And I've I'm not approachable as it is. Like, I felt like I needed to put on some sort of unapproachable sort of, guise or whatever, you know what I mean? And so what I ended up doing was just create a facade. Yeah, that's really what it was. It was a facade. And mostly because I didn't want to be bothered. Like, you would constantly, like, if you're on a crowded subway, like, somebody's coming around handing you pamphlets, or they want to chat you up about some shit you're not really interested in. So I just, I'm listening to fucking, whatever. At any rate, but that's what it is. And then so, it just developed that way. And here's the thing: I'm like 6'5". I'm in the 300-pound range, and depending on when you met me, like, it was a 50 plus or minus 50 pounds of that. So, I've always been a big dude, and it's like that alone was just like a really unapproachable situation. So to turn on a fucking resting bitch face, that's like, hey, yeah, don't fuck with that guy. That's the dragon.
Yeah, it's really funny to me that everywhere I go, people invariably will refer to me as big man or big guy. Hey, what's up, big guy? What's up, big man? Something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't even know, boy. If you knew Chancleta, you wouldn't call me big man.
Yeah, I mean, it got to a point where when I was playing high school football in high school, I joined and people were calling me Big Man. The problem is there was already a guy there that was already called Big Man, to the point where he had Big Man on his jersey. Like, that was his name. Like, that was what people called him. His name was Big Man. All right, cool. And it's like, well, and then so the coach was like, well, he's Big Man, but you're bigger. So what do we call you? And I'm like, Bigger Man? And that's my name. That shit stuck throughout.
Well, it's not bigger, it's bigger.
Well, it was Bigger Man, like that's how they called it, yeah. But I mean,
don't tell me what I'm telling you, man.
I don't like your fucking tone. I'm going to tell you right out the gate. This has to go.
See, overreaction is funny.
It is. It's great. You got a lot of practice with your kids. It's great. But yeah, that's sort of how these things develop. And most of the time, when I'm in a room with a so-called big man, I'm usually bigger, and so it's like, all right, pipe down there, squirt. It's good, and and so that's always sort of been my thing. I mean, it's just always been my life. But I'd like to point out, this is not like an accolade or anything. I never worked for this. I was just sort of big, and that was it.
That's how you came out of the chute, man.
Yeah, and because people like to brag about just about everything, about how tall they are, about how, how fucking their faces are shaped, or whatever the fuck it is. It's like, these are a lot of things that have nothing to do with you. Like, being
I don't brag about my giant testicles for that reason. I had nothing to do with it.
That's it. You know what I mean? If you got a sack of avocados down there, that's like, you had nothing to do with it. It's just, maybe you're a marsupial and you're carrying your kids there. Who knows?
Looks like 2 dead pigeons in my underwear.
Yeah. That's a horrible sight. Yeah. Oh my God.
So you brought up habits earlier. So tell me if you can relate to this at all. So every Sunday, I walk around the downtown docks area, and I basically look for homeless people, and I light them on fire.
Yeah. Stop. Maybe stop. I don't know. I got nothing else for you.
Do you do that? I love it. I love it when people say something just outrageous. Of course, I was exaggerating outrageousness, but someone will say something that they do that's just outrageous, and they're like, "You're like that too, right?" And I'm like, "No."
Yeah, no, I don't. Why would I jerk off around a fleet of cats? That's ridiculous. It's a weird. That's a weird fetish
of cats.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if a gaggle of cats. I don't know. I don't know what, like every group of something has a name for
like
the
if
group. It's in flight,
yeah.
It's like it's already ridiculous to to keep up with. right? Like a gaggle of geese, like if they're on the ground, it's a gaggle. If they're in flight, it's a fucking flock. It's like, I'm already tired of this shit.
Oh, you're boring me to death right now. That's all I know.
I'm trying to explain to you. This is boring as shit. It's like, let's stick to a fucking... Let's stick to a fucking word and go with it. It's too much to learn.
Well, now you know how I feel about the litany of pronouns that are out there. It's like, ridiculous. I'm just like, I'm not going to do it. And it has nothing to do with the individual. It's just, I am not going to learn 80 new pronouns for no reason. Sorry. Whatever your name is, that's what I'm going to call you. And that's the end of it. You want me to call you Betty? You want me to call you Jablip? I don't care. I'll call you that. Don't think that I'm going to memorize everyone's different fucking pronouns, because then I'll start making people memorize my pronouns, and I'll be like, I want you to call me Shamanaheya.
Yeah. It's like, what am I, you know what I mean? Like, hey, listen, if you want me to call you He, She, Cat, I'll call you He, She, Cat, man. Like, that's just make that your name and just call it a day. There's too many fucking things to already. People can't even, like, we're living in a country where people are having problems with which they're going to use. And so, I'm like, it's a losing proposition to be like, yeah, let's learn all these nouns and, that we got to call you. It's like, look, hey, let's have respect for you. Sure. Absolutely. Right. You can do what you like. You can be what you want to be. I can call you what you're going to call you. But just make it a name and then we'll call it that. It's like, because I really don't have any interest in what you want to be called. It's not important. And you got to really stop making it important. Because it takes away from the conversation, in my opinion.
Interesting. So you bring up something that is of particular interest to me. And I feel like I have to make a disclaimer before we get into it. So here's my disclaimer. Whatever you want to be, go ahead and be that. I do not care at all. Like, yeah, whatever you identify as, whatever sexuality you are, whatever sexual identity you are, whatever gender you think you are, none of it matters to me. But here's what I find interesting. We don't treat the gender identity issue the way we treat other issues of identity. And for example, if someone says, I believe I'm Jesus Christ, I identify as Jesus Christ, I am Jesus Christ, something like that, chances are they're eventually going to wind up in a psych ward. I believe the name for it is the Christ complex, right? So I don't want this to happen to anyone that wants to identify as whatever, but I wonder why we don't look at someone saying, well, I was born a man, but I identify as a woman, the same way as we look at someone that says, I identify as Jesus Christ. And I wonder when that happened, how that happened, because that's kind of fascinating to me, and again, I have absolutely no issue with it at all. As I said, if you're a dude and I know you as Bob, and then one day you say, call me Betty, I'll call you Betty. I don't give a shit. If you...
Yeah, no skin off my back.
If you used to... If Bob used to have sex with women and now he's having sex with men, non-issue. Don't give a fuck, right? But if Bob, now Betty, says, I want you to call me she, now I have to participate in the identity issue that this person has. And I don't want to do that. Nothing against that person. I absolutely want equal rights for everybody, but why do I have to participate in it? Is it necessary for me? And this is what Jordan Peterson was talking about when it happened in Canada and they passed a law compelling people to use gender pronouns. And what he said was twofold. Number one, it was the point of participating with someone in their identity issue. And the other one was compelled speech is actually fascist. And he gave examples of where that has happened in fascist countries, because a lot of countries have laws, like we know in America, freedom of speech is limited. It's not an absolute right. It's not an absolute freedom that you have. The whole issue of shouting fire in a theater, that indicates that even though your speech is free, we are going to tell you something that you can't say. Okay, and that's fine. Telling people that they can't say certain things in certain circumstances makes sense, especially when we're talking about public safety. But that's not what Canada did. Canada said you have to say these certain things. And Peterson made the point that it was a fascist thing to do. And I've always found that conversation interesting. But really, the part of the conversation that I'm attracted to is about participating with some, like, again, let's take it back to the guy that says I identify as Jesus Christ. Is it my responsibility now to refer to him as Jesus? Why don't we do that? Why do we frown upon that? But if someone says they identify as anything else, now suddenly we have to participate with that.
I think that we gotten into this culture where everybody's kind of walking on eggshells because everybody's afraid to hurt somebody's feelings.
I'm not.
There's a bunch of
I don't
people,
know who everybody is, but I'm definitely not part of everybody.
That's true. You're not part of everybody, and neither is everybody. But a larger amount of people, I should say. I always got to do that. It's just easier to say everybody, I guess. It flows easier, and I really don't mean that. But many people, I don't
even know if that's true. I'm not sure how to quantify it, because pardon me for interrupting, but this is an issue that I think it's not an issue. This is an idea that needs to be addressed. Is there really a majority in the idea of either political correctness or cancel culture or whatever, or is it just a vocal minority? Because I'm not sure how to quantify that. Because I when I walk around in everyday life talking to people, I don't feel these things that are represented online. I think someone did a breakdown of Twitter and said that it was like less than 20% of people that were commenting were making reference to cancel culture or political correctness. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't experience it in my regular life, which doesn't mean that it's not happening, especially now in quarantine. I'm barely going out anywhere, but I don't have a way to quantify it to presume that it's a majority of people who are focused on this kind of thing.
Well, I mean, that's why I said many, not the majority or anything, just enough people that it's like, it's an issue, right? Like enough people that I'm seeing that it's okay. Well, this is a thing that is really spoken about. I don't know.
And what is the issue?
The fact that there's a lot of people that are particularly sensitive about certain things. And to your point, I've never really encountered them in real life, right?
So it's not an issue for you.
Right.
And you know me, and you talk to me probably more than almost anybody. So it's not an issue for me. How many people do you know that it's actually an issue for?
I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
And I try to be mindful of the fact that, I keep a tight circle in terms of, my friends and family who I hang out with and whatever. So I'm not hearing all of the things and pretending that none of that exists. I just know that there are people, and at least online, I've encountered people, who are particularly sensitive about certain subjects. I'm not going to say that everybody's sensitive about everything or anyone is sensitive about everything, but there's definitely trigger points. There are people that you can't discuss politics with because they just go off the deep end. People are, they don't, and I think that maybe in certain cases, that's just maybe a persona that they've created online. Who knows? I mean, because like you said, they talk to you a certain way online, but they don't do that nobody does that in person, right? So maybe there is something like that, like the way I've done my code switching in the past, where I talk to you a certain way, but when I'm in the corporate offices, there's a different level where I have to do that. You know, I'm from the Bronx. When you go back home and you talk to people, around you a little bit different, right? Of course. You shorten up words, whatever the case is. So I think that maybe that's happening on a certain level online where, it's like, okay, cool. let me go and troll on Twitter. Let me go and do this on Facebook. And maybe that's just the way you have, sort of developed the way you, decided to communicate on social media, right. Either because it's fun or it's a release. I would imagine that maybe that would be the motivation, that it's like, oh, you get to vent here. You get to say all of the things that are bothering you to somebody and make them feel bad, because whatever. So
you hit on something earlier. This idea of people walking around sensitive, right? Back in, I would say 92 is when I started paying attention to Howard Stern, because I was in my car a lot, and so I took in his programming. One thing that I picked up on was when someone called in to complain about something that he just said. So the conversation would go almost exactly like this every time. I've been listening to you for years and I love your show, but now that you're talking about fill in the blank, it's really upsetting me. You're a piece of garbage, you're wrong, da-da-da-da-da, and I don't think I'm going to listen to you anymore. So Howard's response was, okay, so you listened to me for years, by your own words, make fun of everybody else, and you were perfectly content to do that until the moment it hit on something that you're sensitive about, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because what that reveals to me is that people are self-centered. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, you're like one of the saddest examples of this was Isaac Hayes. He was on South Park for years, mm-hmm. and South Park made fun of every religion, every celebrity, everything. They made fun of all actors. They shit on everybody, right? Equal opportunity denigrators, okay?
Shit upon.
And when they got to, what was it, Scientology or something?
I believe that was the subject,
Yeah, it was either Scientology or Jehovah's. I think he was a Scientologist, but so they got to Scientology, suddenly he quit the show, right? Yeah. So that was really disappointing for me. Not that I knew Isaac personally, but I was just like, oh man, I didn't know you were such a fucking dick. Because really, like, right. Why were you okay with the fact that South Park was willing to trash every other religion? You didn't make a peep about that, but then they get to yours and it's like, well, you guys are wrong. I'm leaving. And that, I think, informs what you're describing for people online more than anything else. You can, if you're online on any given day, you're going to see people make comments about all sorts of topics, all sorts of things. Religion versus atheism, right versus left politically, Mets versus Yankees, all that shit, state versus state, city versus city, country versus country, right? There's all these things that are manufactured for outrage and dissent and disagreement, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you do that? How do you let all of that transpire without a problem until something that you're into comes up, and then suddenly, bing, you spring up right. Like the fucking Manchurian Candidate going, hey, I'm activated now, right? Right. It's self-centeredness. It's just pure ego-driven self-centeredness.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. That's what we deal with all the time as far as these backlashes that you get about anything, and that's just it. Like, everything is down to two options where people pick a side, and that's the side I'm rooting for no matter what. And we've said this many times in the past on this show that, you know, I don't know why people are so married to their opinions. Like, why, you know, I can understand that you have a strong opinion on something, right?
Because their opinions are married to their identity.
Okay. Which is bizarre. I mean, I don't know how, I personally, I don't know
It's
how
actually not bizarre. It's like one of the most common things that people do.
So that's just it. I don't know why that doesn't happen for me. Like, so many times in the past, I've discussed things with you, and other people. But so many times, you know, new information came to me. Oh, I didn't know that.
Right.
I'll give you a perfect example of something that happened recent, right? Somebody was attacking Bill Gates about something, right? And I was like, oh, whoa, you know, that's like, you know.
What was it? Was it the chip implanting? Was it the secret experimentation? Or was it
it was
eugenics?
Just something.
What was it?
Yeah, just all of it.
Was he drinking the blood of virgins? Like, these conspiracy theories are so outrageous.
And so, you know, whatever. And then right, and then I was just like, but none of that is actually happening, or at least the points they were making. And I'm like, all right, look, you know, like, and then people would make arguments about it. So why is he even getting involved in medicine? I was like, well, because he's trying to help people. And he's not pretending he's a doctor.
The question I would ask is, why wouldn't he get involved in medicine?
Yeah, like, he's not pretending he's a doctor. He's not going around saying that he's a doctor, but he's well read enough, and he involves himself with enough doctors that that he understands, and he's a very intelligent person, and he has enough money to make an influence and impact on the things that he wants to accomplish. So I don't understand what the issue is. However, I do have problems with Bill Gates. And as he makes these, and as new information comes in, then I go, okay, well, I'm starting to lose a little trust in the guy, right?
Give me a for example, because I'd like to learn about Bill Gates.
So I'm looking a little bit more on this, but I just found out that, so the virus was supposed, like, his intent with the virus release was to convince everybody to make this a sort of open sourced vaccine, so that all of the pharmaceutical companies can basically make this vaccine the same way, and increase production and spread it out to all of the world and get it done. And it's like, all right, cool. However, there was something that happened with AstraZeneca where, due to something he did, which I'm not 100% clear on, he was involved in making it so that they can start making money off of vaccines. Which, listen, I don't have a problem with making vaccines, but the fact that you killed that somehow, I still haven't found all of the details, but this is what I'm.
Okay, let me go back to my question. Let me go back to my question. My question to you was, what is your issue with Bill Gates? And so far, all you've told me is about a bunch of stuff that you're not clear on. So is there something that you're clear on that he has done or said that you have an issue with?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
But the point that I'm getting to,
So then why do you have an issue with Bill Gates?
Well, the point that I'm getting to is that I could have an issue if something, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have an issue.
That was very confusing, because that's not how you started, right? So, but this is what happens when I ask someone to break things down and clarify. This is typically how it goes, right? And it's okay, but because people work on impressions, right? This is my impression of what's going on, but they forget that it's an impression and not something that they've confirmed as fact.
Right.
So, and there's also some confirmation bias, which we talked about ad nauseum recently. So if you have, like, let's say, a suspicion about Bill Gates because you've heard some of the wild shit that people have said about him, and you don't have any facts, you just sort of have, you've heard his name brought up in a negative context, right? which is also a thing called source amnesia. You kind of remember sort of something, but you don't know where. You don't really remember exactly what it was. You just remember this feeling that you had of uneasiness about him. So you've got all these vagaries involved in your impression of either a person or a thing, but you don't have any concrete evidence around it. But the problem is that people are responding to these vagaries.
Right.
And that's why all these conspiracy theories abound. It's because people, and none of this is new to me. I think now that we can all just communicate with each other, it seems like it's new, but it's not. This has always been going on.
Yeah, and to that point, it's just very simple. You get new information, and that should be what guides your opinion, right? Like, I don't understand what the problem is, and this is just me speaking. I don't understand what the problem is with just being, oh, okay, I was wrong on that. And I move forward. Now I'm no longer.
That. Yeah. What the problem is that people's opinions are tied to their identity.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're a critical thinker, right, you are going to understand that sometimes you're going to be wrong about things. If you are not a critical thinker, then a lot of things enrage you, right? Oh, how could you say that? Oh my God, there is a God. I'll prove it. Whatever. And again, believe what you want to believe. I don't give a shit. But don't get mad at me if I don't hold the same belief that you have, because it's a big world. Let's let everybody believe what the fuck they want to believe. As long as you're not hurting anybody with those beliefs. If those beliefs are not married to actions that are harmful to other people, believe all you want. Believe that there's a teacup circling the universe that controls everything. I don't care. It means nothing to me. My life literally does not get affected at all for you to have that belief.
You know what I find really funny? What people pass off as proof when they're trying to prove some shit about some wacky fucking conspiracy or whatever. It's so hilarious. Like, I remember this guy saying something about if you take all of the names in Genesis, of all the people in Genesis, Adam and all of that stuff, and you change it to their Hebrew name, and then this Hebrew name means this Hebrew name means that, and basically it just spells out like, Jesus is coming someday or whatever. Like, that's what all those names break down to and whatever. And I'm like, so see, Jesus exists. And I was like, what how is that proof? Like, right. Let's say that happened, right? Let's say that all those names mean what they say, and that's all, and all of that breaks down to, yeah, Jesus is coming. So maybe, that the writers decided that that's going to be part of the chapter 18 later on. I don't, what the fuck how's that proof? Like, I don't understand.
You just don't understand. Obviously, the Bible is true, and the evidence for what is in the Bible is what's in the Bible. The Bible is true because the Bible said it. You understand? It's like,
I gotcha.
If I was on the witness stand, if I was a defendant and I was accused of murder, when the prosecuting attorney asked me, "Did you murder Mr. Smith?" I would say, "No, I did not murder Mr. Smith. I am innocent." And if he says, "Can you prove that?" Then I say, "Of course I can. I just said it."
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much what happens. And I see this shit all the time. And it's like, my favorite thing is watching flat earth videos. And I say this all the time. This is like my guilty pleasure. I love watching these fucking things.
Your go-to dysfunction?
It really is. It's like, like a lot of people like to watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I do that shit. Like, it's my guilty pleasure. It's what I like to do. Because it's just like, it's kind of like watching a certain element of the human population, right? Just being ridiculous. So it plays out like a comedy show, really. Like it looks like sketch comedy to me. Yeah, that's what it looks like. And it's because they're just so like, and they're so emboldened with their ideas and or lack thereof, right? Like they have these, oh, let's do this experiment and watch us prove it, and they're missing so many variables. They have no control within the experiment, and it goes on and on. But it's just like, people throw money at them to, prove with your flat earth model, that this exists. And if you can do that, like you get, 10 grand or whatever, then they don't even take up the challenge. So I think that there's probably some sort of, like a small group that started this just to be like, yo, let's just fucking troll. I think QAnon, personally, they're just trolls. I think they gotta be, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that they're really like believing this shit. I think that there's a group of like dudes living in a basement somewhere that are good at fucking networking, and they're just hiding behind some sort of VPN, whatever, and just like fucking firing off bullshit. Like, yo, let's fuck with these Americans.
So it's like one big performance piece.
I think so. It's too absurd. Like, it's just way too absurd to me.
No, you're giving people way too much credit. No, there are people that believe that shit.
I want to think that there's a chance for humanity, probably, and I would rather that scenario.
There is no evidence for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's gonna be a shit show. It's gonna be great. But I don't know. We'll see.
I think George Carlin put it best regarding humans. We're a biological cul-de-sac.
Yeah, that's my boy. George Carlin has said a lot of things that have. I was watching a comedy special of his that I think he did in 2010. No, like not the last one.
Yeah, no, he definitely didn't do it in 2010 because he died in 2008.
2008, whatever. The one before.
Although he is very clever,
Maybe, I don't know. It's it's like Tupac of comedy. I don't know. So anyway, it was the one. It was the show right before his last one that I was watching. I think it was that. It may be called I forget. It doesn't matter. The point is that the point is that the show was so good, and it was so like it could have been done yesterday and it would have made so much sense, right? Yeah. And I'm like, that's so scary, right?
Well, there's a temptation for me to think that Carlin was ahead of his time. And it's because I'm heavily invested emotionally in George Carlin because he was my hero.
Yeah.
But he wasn't really ahead of his time at all. And the reason why is because everything that he described, it was going on when he was alive, but it was also going on for all of human history before that.
Sure, yeah.
So if we accept the idea that literally nothing's ever changed beside technology, then human behavior is just wash, rinse, repeat, right? Every generation does the same shit over and over and over again. The people that get old enough to help the younger people out are people that the younger people ignore. So, because if I roll up on, let's say, I'm 56, so if I roll up on a 26-year-old young man and say, I want to pass on the accumulated knowledge from my life, he'll probably be like, I see dead people.
Yeah.
I'm the crypt keeper to that guy,
Yeah.
And I know what you're thinking. I look shockingly good for a crypt keeper. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. But but really, it's and what's interesting about that to me is when I was young, I particularly paid attention to older people. I understood that older people knew things I didn't know. Yeah. So I wanted to steal their essence, essentially. Like, oh yeah, bring it on. Talk to me. Tell me what you know, because I can apply it to my life, and maybe I can avoid the typical mistakes that people make because I've gotten information about someone who dealt with that already and got to the other side.
Yeah. I can't say the same, but I totally get it. I mean, who doesn't think, if you could go back in time, like if you can go back into your 20s with all the knowledge that you have now, like, that scenario has been played out in people's heads so many times. And
if I knew then what I knew now, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And for that very reason, except now, we have older folks that we can listen to. Even the dumbest old dude can teach you something, just like a kid can teach you something.
That's a little extreme, but
I mean, obviously, but just roll with me here. Jesus Christ, everything.
Stop saying silly things.
I say silly things. This is why you got me on the show. I say ridiculous shit all the time. Like, that's my modus operandi. This is what you take that away from me.
So you know what? Don't stop saying silly things.
Moving on.
So bottom line is this. I mean, age and wisdom don't necessarily go together. But for me, if I find someone older than me, and obviously there are people older than me, even now, I am happy to listen to them. I mean, I feel that I was fully baked by the time I got to 35, but I've obviously made distinctions in my knowledge since then, and I will gladly listen to people that are either older than me or more experienced than me in certain areas, because you really can't be jack of all trades. There are going to be things that other people have experienced that you have no awareness of or no competency in, and these people can pass on valuable information to you. Sure. But again, this goes back to what we were talking about in terms of clinging to opinions and being so easily offended and all this stuff. A lot of it has to do with ego. If your ego is out of control, then you won't have the capacity to listen to someone that might be able to teach you something because you'll assume you already know it, or you won't change your mind because there's no way that someone else's thinking can be better than yours. And, in my earlier life, and I mean, I haven't heard this in over 30 years, but people used to call me opinionated. And I know why. I'm very passionate when it comes to things that I believe. But the word opinionated doesn't mean you have a lot of opinions, because that's what people generally were trying to communicate to me, is that sure. I have an opinion about everything, quote unquote, right? But that's not what opinionated means. Opinionated means that you stubbornly adhere to your opinion. And like you said earlier, if I am talking to you, and you've experienced this firsthand dozens of times.
Sure.
If you tell me something that I had not considered or didn't know, and it's better information than what I had, I will adopt your new information as the correct thing. I will abandon my idea in the blink of an eye because I have no ego connected to that idea. It's just a fucking idea.
Like the Mandalorian says, this is the way. I just don't really see.
Wait, hold on while I choke down my puke. Hold on. Wait.
Flatulence. Live at 9. See ridiculous.